The Democratic caucuses in Nevada and the Republican primary in South Carolina are huge tests for the outsider candidates this election season. In the Republican field, Donald Trump dominated for months and won decisively in New Hampshire. Bernie Sanders is giving Hillary Clinton all she can handle, nearly matching her total in Iowa and demolishing her in New Hampshire. So how will these outsiders fare with voters today? Let's talk about it with David Avella, a Republican strategist. Nicole Graham is a Democratic strategist and an attorney. Welcome to both of you. Nicole, to you first. What's the appeal of the outsiders this election year?
Well, you know, I think Trump's base would argue this, but I think both candidates actually, the American public, they're kind of acting like the 1960s hippies. They're done. They're done with the establishment. They're done with people lying, and they want somebody else, somebody fresh. And I think that's part of the appeal.
And Bernie Sanders from your party, is he the outsider?
You know, he's been in the Senate for years, and you would see on paper, you would think he was an outsider, an insider. But who's more insider than Hillary Clinton? She lived in the White House. So compared to Hillary Clinton, he's the outsider.
David, seems like there are lots of outsiders still left in the Republican race.
You know, our field really breaks down into three groups. You have those who want to completely blow up the system and start over, and those tend to be your Donald Trump and Ben Carson supporters. You have those who believe that Republicans haven't been true to conservative principles, and we need to get someone who can win, and that breaks down into the Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio supporters. And then you have your traditional grassroots Republicans, who favor Jeb Bush and John Kasich. Now, that's fluid. Certainly there is overlap amongst those groups, personified by the fact that tonight 10% of South Carolina primary voters say they're still undecided, and 25% say that they still may switch their vote before they cast it tonight. So while we talk about insider-outsider labels, it may not be the best way to describe voters. It's really those looking for someone who's going to shake up the system versus someone who's going to handle the status quo. Because let's keep in mind, Ted Cruz has been in elective office and has had a government paycheck most of his life. And as we see every day with Donald Trump, he is a matchter politician.
Are you surprised, David, at how well Donald Trump is doing, given the fact that he hadn't run for office before?
Look, Donald Trump has a message that Americans, voters, and I would say not just Republicans, because Donald Trump won New Hampshire with independent votes, and is doing very well in South Carolina with Democrat and independent votes because they can vote in the Republican primary. He is talking about conservative ideas that Americans support, which is securing the border, which is getting job creation going, and most importantly, which really appeals to American voters, is that he's willing to say exactly what he means, whether that's politically correct or not.
Nicole, in our latest Fox News poll, Bernie Sanders overtook Hillary Clinton for the first time on a national basis. I mean, could you see an election where we have a Donald Trump taking on Bernie Sanders?
You know what? Right now it seems like that. And I think one of the things that we would have to think about is if Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump, we'd have another outsider come into the race. I think Michael Bloomberg would become a serious candidate. So while we say, you know, it would be Trump versus Sanders, I think it would be Trump versus Sanders versus Bloomberg. And I do think that's a very big possibility.
We've had, obviously, a Democratic administration in power for the last 7 years, going on 8, Nicole. Does it worry you that people, really in both parties, are so agitated for change, it seems?
You know what? It, on the surface, would seem to bother people. But the thing is, America was based on the concept of we're not going to take the establishment. You know, we've always had the American people, their will is what decides what happens in America. And while I think, you know, it might be troubling to the actual base of the party, the American people, their will is what makes up eventually who's an insider and who's an outsider. So, you know, we follow the will of the people.
It's going to be a fascinating ride to November. Nicole Graham, David Avella, thank you both.
Thanks.
Thank you.